We're living in a world that's experiencing wars in a whole new way. We're closer to the conflict than ever. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has helped us see just how different war looks in a connected world. A lot of us feel removed from the conflict zone, but are we? With looming cybersecurity concerns and warnings from government officials worldwide, Russia's war is going digital. On February 24th, 2022, Russia began what it called a special military operation in Ukraine. News outlets soon reported that the Russian military had launched a full-on invasion to take over the country. Over a month later, the war is still in full force, and neither side shows signs of surrendering. We've seen a lot about the military impact and the economic impact, but one thing we haven't heard as much about is cybersecurity. Concerns of cyber attacks have been present from the start, and government officials are warning that we may see cyber attacks any day now. US President Joe Biden said in a recent press conference, the magnitude of Russia's cyber capacity is fairly consequential and it's coming. But why should we even think there's a threat? What is Russia really capable of? Well, you may recall in May of last year, there was a pipeline outage that caused gas shortages and prices to surge. This outage was caused by a cyber attack, and it's believed that the hacker group has Russian ties. While there's no evidence that the Russian government was directly involved in this incident, it just goes to show you what their country is capable of. And back in June, a US meat packer company got hit with a cyber attack that caused supply chain and production issues. They ended up paying an $11 million ransom to get their facility back up and running, and it's also believed that this hacker group has Russian ties. Both of these attacks highlight Russia's ability to affect critical infrastructure in the US, and with the conflict raging on, we may see Russia turning to alternative methods of combat. Regardless of what physical attacks may look like, Russia might be ramping up cyber attacks due to increased sanctions other countries have been placing on them. Even private companies like Visa and MasterCard have cut off access to their network, and Russia can't continue on like this forever. There's gotta be backlash coming. So what could a Russian cyber attack look like? I'm splitting this up into two categories: infrastructure and personal attacks. In infrastructure, you have cell networks, airlines, pipelines, cross-country freight, and power grids. The Russian government may attack this critical infrastructure in the US or other countries, and these are things that we can't do anything about individually. However, governments and private companies worldwide are already consulting with security experts to tighten their security. But there are other types of attacks on a more individualized level. Things like brute force attacks, backroom security compromises at companies like Google, Facebook, PayPal, Cloudflare, and AWS, and things like ransomware or malware attacks on personal devices. There's things you can do to take action and prevent these attacks from happening, but why does it really matter? What is a brute force attack or a backroom security compromise? What does it mean for you in your daily life? Is it really something that you need to be concerned about? At an infrastructure level, we could see costs of goods rising due to inefficiencies in supply chains from downtime. We could also see outages that affect travel and everyday life. At a personal level, things may be much more crippling. Bank accounts, email addresses, social security numbers. These are the types of things the Russian government may be targeting so they can steal your identity or mine personal data to sell or even pull money from your bank accounts or crypto wallets. In all of this, it's good to be aware of what's happening in the world and take some basic steps to protect yourself. There's no need to panic, and like I mentioned earlier, security experts are already working with governments and private companies to harden security and prevent these attacks. But there are also steps you can take to prevent attacks from happening as well. The ways you can protect yourself against personal attacks would be to secure your online accounts, secure your data, and protect your devices. If a hacker is targeting a bunch of accounts and you have a basic password like 1234, of course they're going to be able to get into your account, but someone else who's using proper security tactics may not have their account compromised. One of the ways you can avoid using the same insecure password on every website or using 1234 as your password is to use randomly generated passwords on each website. You might be wondering, how am I supposed to keep track of all of these different passwords? And that's where a password manager comes in. Bitwarden is a free one that I recommend, and I personally use 1Password, which is available for just a couple bucks a month. I'll have links to these tools in the description below, as well as comparison videos where you can find out which one is right for you. You should also consider deleting old accounts on websites you don't use anymore. Sometimes you can log into your account and just click the account section and find a delete button, and other times you can reach out to their customer service and ask that your account data be deleted. If it's not an account you're going to use, there's no reason to have your personal data sitting on a server somewhere. That server could be a target for an attack and your personal data could get out. So if you're not using it, delete it. The next way to improve your online security is to use two-factor authentication. This is where when you put in your password on a website and click sign in, it will ask you for a unique code. Sometimes it's a text code, or sometimes there's an authenticator app like Authy or Google Authenticator, which you launch on your phone, get the code, and type it in. If you aren't using two-factor authentication, pause this video, go set it up on your important accounts like your bank accounts, your email address. Make sure to get that done and set it up. I know it's kind of a hassle, it's a little bit annoying to deal with, but it really protects your account. If you want to take this to the next level, you can use what's called a physical security key. What is a physical security key? I'm glad you asked. It's this device right here. It's got USB so I can plug it into my computer after I sign into a site, tap right here and it authenticates. Or if I've got my phone, it's got NFC on it. I can just tap it to the back of my phone after I sign in and it authenticates. So it's the same exact thing as two-factor authentication, except I have to physically hold this key to get into my accounts, and I don't have to bother with randomly generated codes that change every 30 seconds. Another way that you can protect yourself online is by using a VPN. A virtual private network, or VPN, encrypts your internet traffic so prying eyes can't see what you're doing. Typically, without a VPN, your internet service provider or that public Wi-Fi network you're on at a coffee shop can see everything you're doing online. But a VPN shuts that down, it makes sure that those networks can't see what you're doing, and it also masks your IP address. Mullvad and Surfshark are some of my favorite VPNs at the moment. I'll have them linked below, as well as a link to some comparison videos on which VPN is best for you. Another thing you'll want to do is double check your device's antivirus and make sure it's up to date. If you're using Windows, go into Windows Defender and make sure it's active, running, and updated. And if you use a third-party antivirus, you should do the same. I'm not a huge fan of third-party antiviruses on Windows, but if you have one that you like and it works for you, that's great. Just make sure that everything's good with it and it's running smoothly. If you're on a Mac, I do recommend using Malwarebytes to scan your Mac every so often for spyware. Macs generally don't need antivirus softwares, they kind of have one built in, but they can collect spyware. So I use a free version of Malwarebytes to scan my Macs every so often, and it has caught stuff before. And speaking of updates, always make sure your device's operating system is running the latest version. You do not want to be using an outdated version of the OS, because as hackers come up with new attacks, these companies are patching operating systems quickly and pushing out updates. But if you don't have the latest update, guess what? Your device is still susceptible to these old attacks that have already been patched, and it would be really unfortunate for something to happen if you could have prevented it by just updating your software. Also, make sure you have protection in place against identity theft. The #1 way you can do this is make sure your credit is frozen. Go to the credit bureaus. In the US, there are 3 main ones: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Just look up their website, look up how to freeze my credit. It's free to do, it's easy to do, and this makes sure that someone can't open a credit card or get a loan in your name. I don't think you necessarily need to pay for an identity monitoring service, although you can if you'd like to, but make sure your credit is frozen, and make sure you use a credit monitoring service like Credit Karma, which is free, so that way if something did happen and if an account was fraudulently opened in your name, you can take care of it right away, which gives you the best chances at disputing it. And for all you NFTers and crypto people, I highly recommend using a hardware crypto wallet to store your assets. This is where you have a physical device and your assets are stored locally instead of in the cloud. Because if you're using a digital crypto wallet that's in the cloud, that wallet could get hacked and someone could take all of your assets. But if they're stored locally on a hardware crypto wallet, someone would have to physically steal that wallet to take your assets from you. These are some tactful ways to keep yourself protected from potential cybersecurity threats. Whether Russia takes this war digital or not, these strategies will strengthen your online profile and make it harder for hackers to get access to your data. We don't know how this conflict is going to play out, but one thing is clear. Because of the magnitude of the internet, wars will never be the same again. I think one reason that Ukraine has been doing so well in this war is because of the power of social media. Wars don't happen behind closed doors anymore. The Ukrainian government and citizens have done a fantastic job communicating exactly what's happening, and the result has been the entire world holding Russia accountable through sanctions and other means.